You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to do another topic around retail media as a whole. Huge topic and conversation I'm having regularly with brands, agencies as well. And I was catching up with an old friend the other day, one of the first people that poured into e-com advisory back in the day, now BWG Connect, Nii Ahene but at the time it was CPC Strategy, right? Mm-hmm. But then I know through an acquisition, through building a top agency, tech partners, anyways, you're just a great friend and resource. And so everybody, we're going to tackle retail media kind of as in a continuous fashion, I think, because it's top of mind for a ton of people. But Nii, I'll kick it over to you. I'd love a brief background, yourself, kind of your journey, and then what you're up to now. And then we can jump into, what does the future of retail media look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So started a digital agency called CPC Strategy with some friends from college way back in 2007. And prior to that, I was working at eBay as a product manager, actually doing SEO for eBay way back in 2006, 2007. And so from that experience, in that part of that decade, we saw that, people were obviously buying products online, and there was going to be an opportunity to provide managed services to help brands and retailers and D2C sell online through platforms like eBay, but more specifically, platforms like PriceGrabber and Shopping.com. So we founded CPC Strategy back in 2007, didn't raise any funding, organically grew that, and just followed the growth of e-com from 2007 all the way to 2018. And so that took us from comparison shopping to Google Shopping, and then eventually to Amazon and retail media. And we were really one of the first agencies to develop managed services around retail media back in 2011, 2012. In fact, before Amazon had sponsored products, we were helping brands just launch on Amazon, believe it or not. And that's before they had any ads at all. And so we built our company around the growth of e-commerce, around D2C, and then sold that business back in 2018 to what I'm pretty sure a lot of folks in the audience are familiar with, Tinuiti, which is a large performance marketing agency, manages about $4 billion in media. I stayed with Tinuiti for about 6 years, helping guide it through a recapitalization, did a number of acquisitions with them as their chief strategy officer. And then I retired, or semi-retired if you talk to my wife, in 2024. And now I spend time kind of both in AI, the creator economy, and doing a fair amount of angel investing. So that's what I've been up to. But still pay a lot of attention to the commerce space. Obviously, that space is super dynamic, and it's hard to tear me away from it. So
I do want to get into retail media, but what was that like in 2006, 2007? You're at eBay, and you're like, I've got an idea.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like? Is that at the time you're like, I have an idea about a future state and a future need. Let's go. Right?
It was advantageous because being at eBay, that's a Silicon Valley. And so startups were kind of everywhere. And we just saw this opportunity. We saw that, people were making real money at eBay. My business partner, he worked at a company called PriceGrabber, which was a comparison shopping website. And we saw this trend. Now, we didn't think it was going to become as big as what it became, but we saw an opportunity to say, hey, people were spending money on these platforms. They're listing their products. Is there an opportunity to provide managed services there? And so, I was 22 at the time. And so we just jumped into it and said, hey, let's start giving advisory work. And, one thing led to another. We reinvested those profits and built a pretty substantial enterprise as a result. So I would say I wish I had a master plan. I could see a way in the future. Otherwise, I probably would have invested every dollar I kept in like Amazon and other businesses in the space. But no, we were just young. We wanted to start a business, and we just happened to be in an industry that, had huge secular growth over the last, 20 plus years. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more of a why not mindset, right? As opposed to a why mindset. And it's, I think, a major differentiator between what can happen at a large, company as a whole, I see it a lot. We can kind of tie it into retail media here in a second is, as you're smaller or if you're independent or whatever it is, you can say, why not give it a try?
Hmm.
Whereas, as you get into large corporate America, even whether it's huge agency side, whether it's huge brand side, it is a why, justify it to me. And a lot of times in the process of taking all the time and gathering all the data to justify the why, the opportunity is gone, right? Over and over again. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think that's something that's interesting as we get into retail media. And I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts on the future of retail media. The episode that launched just prior to this one was with Megan Caroon over at Clear Data around
Hmm.
incrementality and the importance of it. And she is doing a lot of that data gathering and proof of concept for large organizations and showing that it does work. But what was really interesting is there's a lot of brands, smaller brands that jumped into retail media and saw um, just huge gains that
Hmm.
normally shouldn't have been done, but large brands weren't quite ready to jump in yet. But anyways, I'll kind of kick it off. Like, what do you see as like if you have a current state and like a future state, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's been pretty crazy over the last 10, almost 15 years, seeing the entire retail media ecosystem develop. To your point, when we first were providing management services to the industry, your large brands, your large CPGs, your large consumer electronics companies, they weren't really involved in the space at all. And so that created a large opening for new brands to emerge in that space. And so the quintessential example of a brand that has become somewhat of a household name, but really grew on the backs of both the marketplaces and retail media is Anchor Digital.
Oh,
Uh, they literally grew on the backs of retail media. Now they have physical distribution. They have, they're in Walmart, they're in Best Buy, they're in various different places. And that opportunity to kind of create a brand on the backs of the marketplaces, that no longer exists because you have your Procter and Gambles, you have your Sonys, you have your Samsungs. Everybody is vying for the attention. And I think the biggest shift that happened from, I guess, 2011 to 2021, that's kind of the first stage of retail media, is that consumers stopped going to Google to do their product searches as their primary place, and they shifted to places like Amazon to do those product searches. And that demand, that shift is really why retail media was able to emerge. And that's still why Amazon's such a dominant player, is because you can do your research there, you can do your comparison there, and you can buy the product there. And so as we see the emergence of other retail media networks, everything is an ad network, as the industry is fond of saying. The question I always ask is, what why does a consumer go to this website, whether it's Macy's.com or footlocker.com, and are they going there at the point of purchase or are they going there to do their research? And anybody who builds a retail media network, you have to win at the research and discoverability point. Otherwise, your retail media network isn't truly going to be interesting or incremental for consumers. And when I look at the proliferation of retail media networks, that's where I really start to ask the question. Some of these brands, some of these retailers probably shouldn't have their own retail media networks because consumers aren't doing research there. And then if you truly do incrementality as a brand, what you're gonna probably see is you're paying a tax there because these are searches that would have happened anyway, but you're not truly getting any incremental gains. If anything, maybe you're taking some market share from a competitor, but you truly aren't building new loyal customers. And so what I would say is until we see a brand kind of emerge from retail media through a Target network or a Walmart network or a Macy's network, the true incrementality to the platform, it's really about taking market share from competitors versus really building the brand. And so that definitely has ramifications for agencies, that has ramifications for brands. And it's something that I definitely think about as I think about kind of the evolution of where retail media needs to go.
I mean, you talk about that proliferation of like retail media networks. It's probably 700 by now.
Hmm.
Like, what's the driver? Like, how should people think about it? Because it seems right now, a lot of times the brands they want to right now, especially when profitability is key. Give me the top five. Well, this is most brands I'm talking to. They're like, give me the top five. Well, then why do we need 700? But everybody's launching one.
Hmm.
What?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then they're putting pressure on the brands to invest. Like, so there's a couple things, right? There's the retailer side who wants to grab those dollars, and there's the brand side who's kind of fighting spending it if it doesn't make sense. Like, how do you how do we rationalize those two different sides?
I think for traditional brands, and so these are brands that have distribution through their wholesale networks to retailers and have a physical presence in distribution. For these brands, they need to look at their investments in retail media as investments and their relationships with their retail partners and their trading partners as a whole. And so if you're getting pressure from a large big box retailer to invest in retail media, what you should be doing is either getting understanding what the value of that retail media network is on your offline sales. And really, you should be asking the question, if I invest dollars in this retail media network where 80% of my sales happen offline, am I getting the benefit from that investment? Or are there other opportunities for me to drive awareness to my products, to drive discoverability for my products, buying digital traffic, but driving that transaction offline? And I think that's really where the conversation is leading with retail media is that, if you're just focused on the digital consumer and 80% of your sales are happening offline, your opportunity to really drive value through that retail media network is limited. And I think more and more brands are getting aware of the fact that, hey, no, this needs to be part of a larger story. And we should be talking about end caps. We should be talking about digital activation. We should be talking about influencers pushing people to come to the physical stores, because that's really where the benefit of these big retailers are. It isn't just digital. And I think that shift is starting to happen. And so what I really see is a sort of convergence between retail media and shopper marketing. You're going to see a lot more digital couponing program. You're going to see a lot more distribution through off platform channels. And I really think that's where brands need to focus on, especially with their traditional retail partners, because that's really where you're going to be able to grow your brand and drive awareness, because there's a limited amount of search queries on these websites. And unless you see, besides Walmart and Amazon, very few of these websites are really growing year over year in terms of overall search traffic. And so that reality means that how you drive a consumer to buy that product, whether you're driving that product to a Trader Joe's or driving that consumer to a Target or to a C store, you have to think about that. And so, yeah, I think that the retail media dollars for a long time, they were taking share from other different other different marketing buckets. But in 2025, you have to look at it truly through a lens of incrementality and truly through a lens of where you realize demand. And then I guess on the flip side of that, for your digital only brands, I really question, if you don't have physical and wholesale distribution, why you're investing in non-digital endemic platforms without calling out names. Just one that we all know about. But if you only have digital distribution, you're not in the physical stores, I question why you're investing in retail media networks that are outside where consumers can't go to the physical store and buy your product.
Yeah, do you think a lot of it is just from a FOMO standpoint? Because I think that is driven, what I saw after the pandemic hit, is, this massive push into digital, and FOMO hit bad, where everybody was trying everything, and it could be a new tech, it could be a plugin on D2C, it could be ads or spend on Amazon, Walmart, wherever. Everybody was spending money everywhere because they were afraid they weren't going to do something and be able to capitalize to the fullest. And there's a giant pullback in 2024, including the end of 2024, and almost like this reevaluation of tech stacks across the board. But I also think it's going to be around the retail media spend. I think a lot of those brands were just doing it because they heard everybody else was doing it. Now, yeah, with Amazon, it usually pays off. That's the reality. Walmart, depends, from what I hear, it can really work, especially if you're in a typical grocery run. Like that can be very impactful. But that's kind of getting to your point of, you've got retail distribution as well, right? How can if somebody's going to a grocery run, I can put an ad in front of them, they can show up. But you start going down the line, it's the land of diminishing returns on a lot of these other retailers. And yet those retailers are pounding on doors. But I
Well, I
do,
mean, from a retailer perspective, I understand why. I mean, these are high margin dollars, right? If I can turn an organic search query into a paid search query, that just falls to the bottom line after I spend the investment I need to kind of set up an ad server. So I get why retailers are going to want to push this as kind of a profit center because it's an area of growth. It's a shiny object. It's one of the fastest portions of digital marketing. I get it from their perspective, but as a brand and as a person that's deciding on the portfolio strategy, which SKUs to invest in, which retail media networks to invest in. I think we're way, the cost of capital is no longer 0%, right? We have real interest rates. We need to make a real return. And so we have to take a critical look at how we're spending the dollars, where we're spending the dollars, and why we're spending the dollars. And fear or the fact that our competitors are there is no longer a rational excuse for where and why to spend those dollars.
yeah, and I see it even on the smaller retailers where, even a brand will go in and say, hey, how do we get to the top? How do we do it? They're literally pushing a lot of these small retailers into a space that, I mean, obviously, like your point, they will obviously take the dollars, but the cost of setting up and managing a retail media network is not zero for
Mhm.
these retailers. And yet they're being pushed by larger brands to do it. It'd be interesting to bring one of these smaller retailers on, and kind of walk through their idea of the ideal situation. Like, do they have a retail media network? Did the reason we get to 700 because we have large brands pushing these small retailers to do it and then justifying it with, hey, look at everything we did with Kroger and everything we did with Target and everything we did with Walmart and obviously on the Amazon side. That would, do you think then there'll be so in my mind, as I'm walking through this, there might be a shrinking of the number of these retail media networks, or do you think they're here to stay across the board and just going to keep growing?
I think there has to be a culling of the herd. Um, I I think it's interesting because if I look back at kind of how Amazon's retail media network started initially, it wasn't, believe it or not, it wasn't initially 100% started to make money. It was started because Amazon had a cold start problem, meaning that if you were a new brand, or if you were a brand that had sales in other categories, but you were launching a new product, it was very challenging for you to rank organically in the feed. There was a cold start problem. When you launched a new product, because Amazon's organic feed was ranked by sales velocity, there was a challenge with getting visibility on new problems. That was the initial problem that the retail media networks were built to solve. And so,
Yeah,
to the
because if
ex
there's nothing to feed it, if it's built on sales velocity, or you can even plug in ratings, reviews, do the Vine program,
Mhm.
there's no actual sales velocity. You're on page 5,000,
Yep,
right? And you need to
exactly.
be on the first page somehow. How do you get a spot on the first page without upsetting organic search? Okay, it's an ad. All right, awesome. I
Yep.
think
So
I'm following.
that's exactly how it started. It's evolved into, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily on Amazon, although you're going to find some retailers and manufacturers that feel this way, into just this tax that exists that for me to defend my brand, if I'm Duracell and I rank for Duracell, and if I don't want Energizer on my search result, I have to defend this space. That's what it's evolved into. And I think that retailers on a long tail of retail media networks need to think about what's, you know, think back to first principles. If the challenge is discoverability, there are two things that drive a better discoverability situation for brands. It's one, are you getting in front of new consumers, not just taking share? And then two, what's the ability for me to successfully launch a new product? And I think the evolution of retail media isn't just slapping ads on top of every search result, but it's figuring out better ways to answer that question. And if that means leveraging first party data to enable brands to advertise towards loyal customers across off a platform, that could be one solution. If it means creating editorial content, that could be another solution. But for me, unless you're growing your overall search query traffic on your website, you probably don't have a right to win in retail media. And so you can define that any way you want. That can be aggregate search queries, that can be search queries for a category. So if I think about like a Sephora or a company like that, they probably are dominating and they're probably growing in terms of fragrance and beauty search terms. But if you're not winning in terms of the overall search query volume over time in the categories that your brand is known for, Home Depot, home supplies, CVS, maybe for pharma and such, then you need to really ask the question, what problem are we solving for brands? And the solution to that problem isn't always a retail media network. I feel very strongly about that.
And do you think that retailers, because I totally agree with you. It has to be a bigger conversation now. And because brands are starting to be able to pull more data out and seeing what works and it doesn't, for the past few years, the retailers are just saying, give us the money, give us the money, give us the money.
Mhm.
I think if brands can go in there with some data and say, hey, I'd love to give you money to drive sales. I'm not just
Mhm.
going to hand you over money. I laughed when I was at Perigo. They were going really, really fast. And the CFO came in. And what if we just wrote Amazon a check for like $3 million? What would they do? I'm like,
Mhm.
they would cash it. That's it. What do we get for it? Who knows? But they would
Yep.
just literally, they would just cash it, which is, I think, what a lot of retailers were pushing for is just give us your cash, just give your cash
Mhm.
and we'll have it all work out. Well, now we have the data, um, the ability to collect data and analyze what's working and what's not, which then can open up, I think, I hope, with retailers for brands to go in and say, hey, listen, we want to give you money, but we want
Mhm.
to grow with the money that we're going to give you. What does that look like to your point? Is it an aisle interrupter, right? Is it an
Mhm.
end cap, a display? Like, what can we do? Is it a special palette that we can make? Like, what could that look like? But let's be smart with those media dollars. So you see, but then are we getting into shopper marketing? And then what does that team look
I
like
think
as a whole?
yeah, I mean, I think that conversion has to convergence needs to happen. I think that if you're only trying to monetize search traffic for most retailers, that's not a winning proposition because you're not driving overall share. But you do have a unique value proposition. You wouldn't be in business if you didn't. And so there are consumers that shop on your platform, that shop in your stores. And so the question that I would have every retailer think about is how can we productize this data? We know these consumers buy these sort of goods from our stores. How can you build relationships with whether they're, the trade desk or other DSPs, or how can you create a situation where you can do some sort of co-op marketing across a social platform so that I can buy those segments to drive incremental impressions to my brand? That's the real opportunity for retail media, but it takes retailers understanding the value that they have, which is a curated audience, a loyal audience that buys all the time. It takes business development relationships to enable that data to be able to be targeted. And it takes creativity, whether that's on the brand side or on the retailer side, to create the ad units necessary to drive attention or grab attention across the various different platforms and services that exist. That's the next stage of retail media. You obviously have Amazon succeeding very well with it through their DSP program, along with Amazon's data clean room scenario. But I would love to see that happen across the long tail of retailers because, again, these retailers exist for a reason. Somebody is shopping there, but it doesn't mean they're shopping online. And so if I'm a brand and I have physical distribution, I still want to get in front of that customer. But if I know that customer is not coming to your website, I have to be able to get in front of them somehow. So give me access to your data so that I can then create campaigns to target this consumer across the places where they do spend time, be it YouTube or TikTok or other places. And that's the real opportunity that I think retail media has in front of it.
So I'm going to go down a path here. So Amazon, rapid, like you're saying, product search engine, right? As it evolved, like you were saying, you're transitioning from Google to Amazon. Um, Now TikTok.
Mhm.
So my personal opinion is that Walmart should buy TikTok.
Okay.
That is where the younger demographic is going to do product research, product discovery, search. They're
Mhm.
looking at how to change a tire. They go to TikTok. They don't go to YouTube or Google.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so whereas Walmart really lost out is that initial search.
Mhm.
Now, either Amazon or Walmart should buy them. That's true. Now, whether or not they end up being for sale, I don't know. But I'm just kind of like the connecting these dots here. That's where I think all of a sudden Walmart, who, despite buying jet.com,
Hmm.
which I mean, I wish they would have just given me billions of dollars. I could have, I could have
I
come over.
mean,
I would
yeah,
have,
yeah, yeah. Muckler did it very well off of that
he did,
transaction.
he did okay. They've struggled immensely to catch
Hmm.
up with Amazon. And yeah, the gains that they've made, percentage wise are way up, but you're way up percentages on a way, way, way smaller number. Like that would be a strategic play where then they could pull in search data, search queries, and to your point, plug it in and do the data feed on the back end, aggregate data. They could then drive sales either to a Walmart, right? I use all that data.
Hmm.
I don't, I don't see how
Yeah.
they don't have a multi-billion-dollar offer on the table. I
Well,
just,
I guess the crazy thing when I think about this is you're absolutely right. That's where the youth is spending time. They're on TikTok, and that's where they're doing discovery. They're discovering new products, whether that's algorithmically through the feed and what gets recommended to them, or what they search and put into the search box. That's why TikTok shops have done as great as they have. I think the GMV on TikTok shops is above five or $6 billion in Q4 of last year. Don't quote me on that. It might move more than that.
hmm,
But the crazy thing about this is that for older generations, there's already a platform that's video based that people do a ton of product research on. And for whatever reason, nobody, at least in the US, has really done a fantastic job figuring out how you can take that attention that you're getting from a video medium and
hmm.
translate it into demand downstream. And I fault both the owner of that platform as well as the retailers for this lack of connection. And that's YouTube.
Yeah.
I know.
How has Google not figured it out? How are they not figured it out? They've got everything everybody's ever bought in the US via their
Mhm.
email. They've got all the data, I totally, yeah,
And
sorry to
so
interrupt you. Like, I
I,
totally agree.
and I don't want to oversimplify things. I don't think that it's easy. But in a world where we have advanced LLMs and AI solving the unlocking the history, the mysteries of biology through protein synthesis and protein analysis and stuff like that, we don't know how to take the clear search demand that people have and interest that people have on YouTube and translate that in a very easy way for retailers and brands to be able to drive it downstream to purchase events that are happening on retailer websites or stores. It's crazy to me. And I know that Google has had to tiptoe around their data because the antitrust challenges that have been, thrown in front of them over the last 6 years, especially over the last previous 4 years during the previous administration. But still, the fact that I can't point to, with the exception of maybe Mr. Squash, I can't point to very many brands that have grown on the backs of strong YouTube marketing. The fact that it's that hard to be able to grow there, there's something wrong there. There's absolutely something wrong there. And so, yeah, I think you're right on TikTok, but the fact that it hasn't happened with the biggest advertising platform that we have as digital marketers is crazy to me.
I don't understand it. I mean, they have Google Shopping, they have everything they could plug in, and yet everybody just looked away, pretended it wasn't happening.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do know that organizationally, the team that's in Mountain View sits separate than this team that's in San Bruno, and those two cultures haven't necessarily come together. And even when they do come together, and the ad manager or in Google AdWords, it's not the best experience. And trust me, when I was wearing my agency hat, I definitely made that clear to my Google reps. It's like, why can't I just buy this inventory the way this inventory is? But still, sometimes you need founder thinking. You don't need enterprise thinking. And that's a perfect example where there's a clear opportunity. There's a pot of gold, at the other side of some maybe challenging engineering problems, but it's worth it because there's a pot of gold, a very big pot of gold to solve that problem.
When you have like, it's not like TikTok creeped up on us. Like
Hmm.
it was the fastest download to how many tens, hundreds of millions of users like ever. And
Hmm.
they immediately clocked the number of viewing hours and percentage of
Hmm.
days like just skyrocket. This happened in the first 6 months of TikTok hitting. So we're
Hmm.
looking back to 2020. Here we are 5 years later.
Hmm.
and nobody's figured it out. I mean, we got really smart people building. I think they just sat back on their algorithms. And
Mhm.
um, we had Jana Weinstein on she's at Blue Wheel now, but she was at TikTok Shop. She was on
Mhm.
like the first team of 10 that was building that whole platform out, and then moved to the partner program because they quickly realized we need to like partner with agencies because it's tough for
Mhm.
brands to figure this out and the amount of content you need to pump out. But here's saying that the algorithm that's there is just unbelievable that people haven't been able to match yet.
Mhm.
And I'm like, they haven't been able to match because they did nothing for 5 years, and now they're just like, oh my goodness, what's going on?
Yep.
Um, because the Google guys are pretty smart, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
pretty smart.
Yeah, they're definitely very smart, but I think that maybe their smartest people are working on different problems, and maybe the ad problem isn't as interesting to some of the brilliant minds there as, pushing the edge of human knowledge. That would be my hypothesis there, and you have a lot of smart business people that are focused on driving incremental value from, to your point, the algorithms that they have versus figuring out, what walls need to come down for us to create new value. And it's the difference between founder thinking and kind of enterprise thinking. I
Yeah.
think Paul Graham has a great essay about that I encourage everybody to read because I think you need both. You need the scale on the enterprise side, but you need to be able to think about problems from first principles from the founder perspective.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Walmart or Amazon buy TikTok?
Yeah, I guess I would be worried because, well, I don't think they'll let Amazon buy it for a number of reasons. But if they did, that'd be incredible. And that'd probably be the best home for them because Amazon really does innovate and they've created a lot of
Right.
new groundbreaking technology. Like if you think about the entire cloud ecosystem, that came out of AWS. It didn't exist. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been IBM, it shouldn't have been Microsoft, it shouldn't have been a lot of other companies to build what they built with cloud, and it came out of Amazon. That just shows their ability to create and innovate. So it's probably a good home with Amazon. I would worry if Walmart acquired TikTok. I just don't see that as being a good home for the continued innovation. And I think that, you know,
Yeah.
it's Walmart reminds me of Yahoo. That it's still around, but if you get acquired by them, we're probably not going to hear about your brand
Yeah.
next decade.
Sincerelyjet.com, right?
Exactly.
Sincerelyjet.com.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, this is too much fun. What else? I mean, I've been picking your brain for a while here. Any questions you have for me?
Yeah, I guess the big question I have for you is when you think about 2025, what do you think brands should be focused on, but they're not? Like, is that AI? Is that efficiency? Is that marketing? Is that the influencer economy, the creator economy? Is that just building better products? Like, when you think about the myriad of things that brands could do, what are they not focused on, but they probably should be?
So I'm gonna give two sides to it. Um, a lot of brands are focused on the AI they're trying to build and integrate into their everyday work,
Mhm.
which is fine. And there's a huge focus on that. And I think there's too big of a focus on that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think there's too big of a focus on trying to evaluate all these different tools that you're going to build into your everyday work life. I think it's important. I would say, hey, that's a professional development thing. I would do it in the evening, and I would concentrate during the day of trying and evaluating these new AI tech partners that are coming out. So it's been really hard to do for the past 3 years because, like you were talking about, when capital is pretty much free, you can go
Mhm.
borrow at 0.5%. There's a lot of VCs out there just throwing cash at people, and I always joke about it, right? I think I could have done a tech startup. I don't know how to code, but I could have gone to 10 people and said, "Hey, give me some money. Let's go do something." Starting in 2021. So there's a lot of that money is dried up as people look towards profitability. What we've seen is a lot of the things that were muddy in the waters, like maybe there was like 25 players, but there should only be three. We're
Mhm.
now back down to like 4 or 5, and maybe there still should be three. A consolidation is taking place. Um, but that new tech. So I would be spending my time looking and evaluating the new tech partners that can save me time and money not necessarily helping me rewrite an email, not helping me like shrink down my notes and consolidate my notes and stuff like that. But it's more along, the lines of, okay, how can this new tech partner ingest data,
Hmm.
and then help me be more efficient with email on my spend and who I'm sending out to? Because there's a really cool company called Arita. Aaron over there is really cool, and they can grab all of your email stack, they plug it in, it separates it out into actually who's interacting and who's not, and it can real time look at and say, hey, this person buys every February. So in January, you start to re-engage. So you
Wow.
can
Okay.
plug in Arita. If you got like Klaviyo, at the end, you send so many fewer emails. The cost with Arita built in is less than
Right.
Klaviyo had before. So you knew Klaviyo plus Arita is less than Klaviyo. Oh, by the way, your deliverability goes through the roof because clicks to spam go down. There's
Mhm.
like Avi's doing it pretty damn quick. On the back end, how can you A/B test with AI and learn how people are engaging on your website? What's the shipping option you should give them? Or
Mhm.
there's new cart save technologies that like these are the new things that I think people need to spend more time vetting to incorporate into their business and not necessarily simply thinking about the productivity piece. I would
Right.
still do that. I just do that like at night,
Yeah,
right?
that's a second. That's like a second tier or third tier kind of option. There are actually companies that are focused on the practical application of AI and recommendation and what you should
And
be doing in decisioning, which is powerful. I agree.
yeah, yeah, and at the end of the day, it has gotten more expensive to operate an e-commerce business, not
Mhm.
less expensive until 2025. And I believe 2025 to 2026, we can see because of what these new tools can do, a drastic tech stack rationalization.
Mhm.
And at the same time, in that, the players you go with, because it is AI. I'll give you a perfect example. I think it is Max Sinclair. He has e-content out of the UK.
Okay.
He has a Amazon detail page generation tool that's like $500 a month,
Wow.
and it's
Wow.
kicking out left and right. The full optimized for the A9 algorithm, and Rufus can do generative images and a video and your A plus content.
That's
That would
incredible.
be
Yeah. Yep.
2,500 to 1,500 to $2,500 in ASIN.
Easily.
Now you're getting 20 to 30 of them done for $500 a month. Like
Hmm.
you can touch your entire catalog now for this for this
Absolutely.
for the same price. And that's where I'm getting pumped, is to see this stuff like that's coming out that's so much less expensive, because it's real machine learning and AI.
Hmm.
It's not the Mechanical Turk where it's, hey, we dumped it in, it really went overseas, hands on keyboard overnight and
The
came
ghost in the
back, where you're
machine.
still
Yep.
paying for the head count, is a little bit cheaper, but not where we're at now. Um, that's where I think people are, I think I didn't say they're missing it. That's not right. I think if you're not doing that this year, you will be missing it. That's what I believe.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. And I think that, obviously you guys are at an advantage because you're kind of sitting at a nexus of kind of gathering the information, understanding what's happening at the edges, bringing it towards the center. But I guess for an executive that's, heads down, trying to make sure they, let's not say they can make payroll, but make sure they grow year over year. What do you think, how do you get your information? And then how would you recommend for an executive that's kind of super busy, focused on growing their business to, quickly evaluate, oh, that's what this tool does, that's what this tool does. What's the best way to kind of, stay abreast of what's happening?
the tough thing is right now it's all just conversations and people
That's
don't
true.
have a lot of time. I mean, this stuff is new. It's so new. I was just doing, I've had like 4,300 conversations over the past 7 years.
Oh my goodness.
Um, I know, right? Like, I don't know. I'm addicted to people. That's the reality. Um, and you have to have a lot of conversations because and it's going to get worse, right? It used to
Hmm.
be, hey, you could jump on with an Amazon agency and keep with them for 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
Now that's not happening. They're being acquired,
Hmm.
um, or if founders losing focus, or they get tired, or they don't keep up with the tech stack. And it's even going even quicker on the tech side is Man, share groups, like whatever share group you can get into, and maybe
Mhm.
it's 5 people, maybe it's 10 people, but it has to be a constant conversation and the willingness to share.
Right.
That's the only, yeah. And I don't know if it's once a month, but it's tough. You can't do all this research because you see this real cool stuff, but a lot of stuff, I go to their web pages. I'm like, I still have no idea what you do. I'll have like two or
Right.
three brands like recommend them like for data aggregation collection. I go to the website. I was like, literally, I have no idea what you do by your website.
Hmm.
So it's almost, I don't want to say it becomes a waste of time, but if you're a founder and you're just going to websites looking for stuff, like those, you're gonna completely miss the great ones, and you're gonna think the poor ones are really really great, and they're not.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's convert. It is the reality is it takes the most valuable thing we all have, which is time.
That's
And
fair.
um and maybe it'll be different, but
No, I
I
think
don't know.
what you said about share groups is real. And I think that's the biggest difference between when we were scaling our business and today. Because when we were scaling our business between 2007 and 2017, maybe there was some share groups, but a lot of information was just received through doing web research and seeing what you
Mhm.
could find online, maybe attending a couple webinars, maybe going to a lot of conferences. I would say the pandemic really has accelerated people's one, how much online they are, and then two, their ability to join Slack groups, Discords, Facebook groups, you name it. There definitely are groups of
Mhm.
like-minded individuals, whether they're paid or free, that are, people exchanging best practices in a non-competitive way. And that's a resource that I definitely wish I would have had as an agency owner when I was bootstrapping the business. And it's a value add. It's a very great hack to be able to use the time and investments and knowledge and mistakes that other people have made to help your business grow. I was fortunate to be a member of EO for 10 plus years, and that was kind of the group I had. I was in a general sense. I think the opportunity now is to find a group that's really focused on what you're focused on, whether that's ecom or Amazon or a specific aspect of Amazon. Those groups do exist. And I think that's a really good call out. That's probably your best way to accelerate your learning.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. But it's also funny, like early on, you could have looked for a year for a share group doing what you were doing. You were just
Mhm. Yep.
you're
Yep.
so like cutting edge. It would I don't know how many people would be relating, and it is different now. I totally agree. Like you can easily find those, whether it's a LinkedIn group. I mean, there's Facebook groups. There's,
Mhm.
they're all over the place now where we have people with a lot of experience, and there's enough people out there that like to share but also like to
Mhm.
learn. It's a lot easier to do it. And that's um yeah, whether or not you have to pay. I mean, when I kicked off Ecom Advisory back in the day, my whole thing, I coming from the brand side, was I didn't want to pay.
Mhm.
As a brand, I shouldn't, I don't want to pay. I want to show
Mhm.
up and learn, and make networking and connections, and not necessarily front the money. But I mean, I would say, in this cases where you do have to pay, really vet it out and see
Right.
if it's worth it or not. There's a lot of them that really are worth it, and there are a lot of
Mhm.
them that are just networking groups that are, the same group over and over again. I mean, I guess if it's valuable, like anything else, the end of the year, do a look back and say,
Yep.
hey, how much did I get out of it?
Absolutely.
What are you most excited about for 2025?
So where I've been spending the most time is really in the creator economy. So, when I think about how media has changed from call it even 2014, 2015 to today, everybody's on their phones. Everybody's looking at vertical content. But even on the big screen, you know, people are subscribed to, your Netflix and your Hulus, but increasingly YouTube, and I'm not talking about YouTube TV, I'm talking about the actual YouTube is what's most often on that big screen. And so this kind of shift, this democratization of content creation has profound impacts on, again, back to the principles I mentioned before, discoverability, the information that we're exposed to, how we decide to identify ourselves and what we decide to buy and consume. So, that's where I've been spending a lot of time. Have a newsletter that I've kind of created around it called Influence Weekly, where I, publish like the most interesting stories about the creator economy. I've gone to probably 4 or 5 different conferences in the last year, focused on this space. And I'm just being a student. I don't have a business. I'm not an influencer marketing firm. I'm not selling anything there. But because I've seen this shift, it reminds me of the shift that I saw way back in 2007 with e-commerce. And, I just want to be a student right now to figure out what is the opportunity to create value for this space in ways that are non-obvious. I'm not looking to be an influencer. I'm not looking to be a talent firm. I'm not looking to be an influencer marketing firm, but I'm observant. And so it's an area where I'm spending a lot of time just thinking about, what does it mean for the future of commerce and the future of society? So that's what I'm super excited about.
Yeah. Awesome, my friend. Well, this has been a great conversation today. Thanks for being such an early supporter of BWG Connect. I still remember that first dinner at the NYY Steakhouse. And as we're going around the table talking, like, you're right, nobody had the share group. So we're sitting this, and you were cutting edge, talking about stuff that people had no idea what was going on. And I think we walked out of there and everybody's like, what did we just talk about? Like, this Amazon thing is taking off. That was awesome back in the day. But thanks for reporting.
I guess what's crazy about that is it was only like 7 years ago, which isn't that long, but it was crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. That's how fast this industry moves.
That was only 7 years ago.
Yeah, 2017, maybe. So 8 years, I guess, here in 2025. But still, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was early
2018 because I kicked this off in July of 2017.
Okay.
We really got it humming by the end of the year, and then we started to crank it up. Yeah, so it was probably almost exactly like 7 years. Wow.
Yep. Wow. But that's how quickly things move.
It does. Well, 7 years from now, we'll have you back and it'll all be holograms and virtual, and maybe we'll be back in the metaverse, but too much fun, my friend. And we'll be sure to get this out there. We can promote what was your newsletter again?
Go to the website netinfluencer.com. That's like a TechCrunch for the creator economy, and you can sign up for the newsletter there. So netinfluencer.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, my friend, for jumping on here. With that, everybody, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.